Greg Gutfeld is next on Book TV. He says that there's a hipster elite in America that determines how our government is run, how the news is reported, and how our children are educated. This is about an hour.
Let me point out that they're clapping more for you.
Of course they are.
Suddenly it went louder when she came out. It's because of the introduction. It's like, how many orphans did you save along the way?
About 500 a morning.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, the Bush Center. The President and Mrs. Bush are not here tonight, but Greg said he will still behave.
Yes. I wore pants.
That's true.
I wasn't going to.
And we're really honored to be here, and to be here together. And we're going to talk a little bit about Greg's new book, Not Cool. Mm-hmm. Talk about a little bit how we met and about the 5, and then we're going to get a chance to take pictures with you guys afterwards. It's great to see some friends here, especially that guy right there, Phil and Marnie Cooney. Thank you so much for coming.
Ooh, somebody has friends.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so special.
Somebody's jealous.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I get it. You're all happy to see Dana.
We are sorry that the main star attraction of the 5 could not be here tonight. Jasper is home in New York City. Do you love Jasper or what? Greg, you're not clapping.
You do realize that Jasper is not a real dog. It's Dick Morris in a fursuit. It's the only way he can get on TV.
Whatever happened to that dog, Casper?
Casper was my imitation Jasper, because she kept talking about the dog Jasper, so I thought I would get my own dog, Casper. And every time she talked about Jasper, I'd say Casper was better, but it was driving you crazy. I could tell you were ready to...
What happened to Casper?
But an unfortunate accident, yes. However, he tasted delicious.
You're an irresponsible parent.
Yes, I am.
Well, let me kick things off by starting with the most important topic of the night. Me.
Yes.
Did you know, Greg, that I was George W. Bush's press secretary?
Had
you heard that?
I had no idea. You never bring it up. It's like a complete... I thought that you worked at a local Arby's.
Just like walked in off the street
yes,
into the
exactly,
studio to join you there. Actually, I thought we would tell people because we get along so well. Mm-hmm. I call him the brother I never wanted. Mm-hmm. But we actually had not met until the day we did the pilot for the 5.
Mm-hmm. That is not true. See, this shows you how memorable I am, is that I actually met you perhaps maybe 3 to 4 months prior. I was out, I was walking in the halls of Fox, and I look and I go, ooh, look, there's Dana Perino. I got to get her for my show, Red Eye. And so she's outside talking to somebody, and she's got that Dana Perino look, like, you know, I'm Dana Perino. This is the Dana Perino look. So hard being me. And everybody's like, oh, look, it's Dana Perino. And so I walk out and I go, hey, how are you? I'm Greg Gutfeld. She goes, oh, yeah. And then I go, you know, you should really do Red Eye. And it was like I had asked her to eat a dung beetle. She went, or she'd smelled something awful, which might have been the case because I hadn't bathed. But she just kind of gave me the look like, yeah, this is probably the last time I'm going to talk to you. She shook my hand. And then it was like months later that you had to sit next to me.
That's right. So we got called out of the blue. Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe they were talking to you for a long time, but kind of got called out of the blue.
I actually suggested you, yes. I was originally, I don't know if you know this, but the show was called The One. And it was me. And I was like that. I just was like, The One, I'm not that way.
That slot's taken by O'Reilly.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's the great one. Not having it. Not having it. But I suggested Dana Perino. We can call it the 1.5. And actually, I wanted it to be called the 10, where it'd be me and Bob. Because, no, I'm not going to explain that joke, because...
I think everybody got it.
Yes.
I think everybody got it. You had a chance to tour the Bush Library today, and...
Yes.
To give us, everybody that's gathered here tonight, your thoughts on the library?
Well, you know, I don't have many libraries to compare it to because I stay out of them, frankly. They've turned into just sins of, dens of sin. Have you been into any libraries lately?
No.
Oh, they're horrible. But this one was great. I got
the iTunes library.
The iTunes library is great because you can just get in there and out without even putting your clothes on. But the Bush Library is amazing. It gave me some incredible ideas for my own presidential library, which will be in approximately 2042, I think. No, but it is amazing. It's an important time when you're walking through to be reminded how the world has changed since 9/11 is what really kind of hits me when you're in there. Because I'm in there and I'm thinking, it's like, okay, this is September 10th, and this is September 11th as you walk through.
And everything after.
Yeah. So.
Well, I loved having you there. It was fun to take you in the Oval Office.
That was nice. I enjoyed it. It's the exact replica. I felt the power. I ordered a pizza. And then I had the delivery man shot. Because that's what presidents can do.
He wanted to know what would happen if the pizza was 30 minutes late.
Yes.
If you got it for free.
Yes. And if I could drone him.
But last night you were at another presidential library.
Yes. I was at the Reagan Library. Another nice library. And another great president.
And you actually, one time you ate Ronald Reagan's dinner. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was my first job out of college was at a magazine called The American Spectator. I was a staff assistant, and basically when you're a staff assistant, your job entails doing whatever the owner of the company wants you to do. Pick up his certain devices at the pharmacy, wash his car. Though I will never forget that one time Bob Tyrrell said, "Hey, do you want to go see a play?" I think it was Hamlet. With Glenda Jackson. I said, sure. I had no idea that I was actually the driver that was taking him and his wife to Baltimore. But so he was having President Reagan over. President Reagan, I guess, had a couple of nights a year that he would go visit a private citizen and have dinner. And one of them was Bob Tyrrell, my boss at the American Spectator. So I was not invited to go. But I was invited to mow the lawns and wash the windows of the house to get it ready. And during that process, I actually went up to my boss. I said, do you think I could just stick around? And he said, sure. So I was able to stick around while President Reagan was there. And it was interesting because you're in it's very surreal. You're in a house on a normal block, and this huge motorcade is pulling up, and it's mind-blowing. It's like a centipede and a Christmas tree in one thing. And you're looking, you want to go tell somebody, and you turn, and there's President Reagan. It was all a decoy. And he was actually behind me, like, for the last 10 minutes drinking, I think, a virgin, what do you call it, orange juice, vodka drink, but without the vodka.
Screwdriver?
Screwdriver, that's it.
You know nothing about drinking.
I know, it's amazing. And your instinct is you think it's somebody in a Reagan mask. That's...
And like a decoy of the decoy.
A decoy of the decoy. And I went up to, and so I had a chance to say something to him, and I always say this, what I said to him was, because it's like you're just shocked. But anyway, he had dinner, I was in the kitchen with Secret Service, and then when he left, I noticed that he had left almost all of his dinner there. He hadn't touched it, so I thought, I'm going to eat the president's dinner. Which I did. I ate his dinner.
Did you think it was going to give you, like,
yes,
power,
I thought that.
Or that you'd grow taller?
That's just unnecessary, and yet you egg her on. You do realize that I am taller than her.
Do you realize that?
Yes, you realize that. It's true. Actually, I often tell people that this is not Dana Perino. Dana Perino is actually inside a robot, Dana Perino, working the levers.
Do you want to show him for once and for all and prove?
Yeah, let's see.
All right.
There you go. See?
I'm going to be fair.
Yes.
I'm being fair. Hold on. Okay. Put it back to back. There. Now we've settled that.
Yes.
I'm still smarter.
Not in everything. Some things.
That's true. Can you give people a little background as to how did Greg Gutfeld become Greg Gutfeld? And what I really would like you to talk about is how your mom, who hopefully she'll watch this on C-SPAN, and she's recovering from some illnesses, and you're going to see her later in the week. So I think people realize, and I've learned this from you, is how much you care about your mom. And I think about what I know from her is what an amazing mom she was, because she recognized your uniqueness and your talents, and then she helped feed those by buying you copies of things like Mad Magazine.
Yeah, but my mom there was always this like writing contests and stuff, like when you're in first and second grade, and she got me into like writing, said having me do enter these contests, and I don't even know where these contests were from, but I would do them, and I would write these short stories, and she encouraged that. She saw that that's what I'd like to do. Perhaps she also saw that I was physically incapable of sports. So maybe it wasn't about the writing. It was that she doesn't want to be humiliated by her son who is not coordinated. So she encouraged me to write. But when I was a kid, she went and bought me magazines that really pretty much changed my life. You know, when you were homesick and your mom would go out, she bought me Mad Magazine. And when you first get Mad Magazine, I'm 49. It's had to be like 1970. It was the first thing that actually spoke to you as a real person, that said, you know, yeah, we understand that the adult world is weird. And Mad Magazine introduced me to politics, and to satire. There were no advertisements in it. It was just this weird little world. And then as I got older, and I think it was by accident, my mom picked up National Lampoon and brought that home. And National Lampoon was racy. It was edited by P.J. O'Rourke during the 70s, and there were pictures of, like, naked women in there, and I actually talked to P.J. about that. I go, why was that in there? And he goes, that was the only way we could meet women. And I go, that makes sense. But there was, like, but it was such a funny magazine. It was like, National Lampoon was the precursor to probably the 80s comedies, or the late 70s comedies, like Animal House and Vacation. They got there first, and it was also just so brutally honest, and it was before political correctness. And PJ was an amazing editor, and he went on to write The Bachelor Home Companion and Republican Party Reptile. And if you know that book, that's a life-changing book. It's about you can be a Republican and you can have fun. You can be against the stereotype. You're not the rigid Dean Wormer from Animal House, or actually maybe the John Belushi. But those magazines framed my life in many ways and made me want to write.
And I love the story that it was actually a magazine that sort of changed your perspective at Berkeley, because that's when you first found American Spectator.
Yeah, you know, it's weird because I was a liberal pretty much by default, because liberalism is kind of an adolescent, romanticized view of the world. That, you know, why can't we all get along? And people who have money are mean if they don't give it to you. Like, all Republicans are just bad parenting. You know, they're bad, evil parents. And that's the way the world was. And when you go to Berkeley, that's what they believe, is like everybody is evil but them. And I didn't have any alternative. I actually worked for the Nuclear Freeze in high school, collecting signatures, which the campaign for the Nuclear Freeze was not to allow nuclear weapons in California. And I did that, believe it or not, for extra credit, because that's what you could do. A teacher actually would give you extra credit for participating in a left-wing cause. And being apolitical and ignorant, I did it. And I got extra credit. When I got to Berkeley, I just thought that's the way the world was, when you'd go to the library and be yelled at by people. There'd be protests where people would actually be screaming at you just because you were, you know, a white kid going, you know, holding your backpack, and they'd just call you names. A friend of mine was carrying this oversized magazine called The American Spectator. I didn't know what it was, and he gave it to me. And I looked, and I go, my God, there's a whole other world out there, an alternative view that actually makes sense. And then 2 years later, I believe, I started working there, because I said I wanted to work there. And the lesson there is, take any position. You know, I was making $370 every 2 weeks. I had no money, but it didn't matter, because it was important that I was there. I wanted to work there, and I didn't care in what capacity I would have cleaned the toilets. And maybe I probably did, and I don't remember.
From there, you worked for a lot of different magazines.
Yeah.
I thought if you could just pick out one story about, because every job that Greg has ever had, he has been fired from.
That is...
At some point. And if you could just pick one story to share of why you got fired, what would it be?
Well, that's pretty easy, because it involves midgets. Or little people, I should say that, in deference to you.
Please.
Magazine Publishing Association had an event, How to Create Buzz, which is designed for you to create public relations press. And I thought it was stupid, and they asked me to come speak. And I said, hey, if you need a seminar on how to create buzz, you're hopeless. And then I thought that was really cool that I said that. And then I started thinking, no, that was stupid, because I could have said that to them on stage. So I called them back up and I said, I want to be on. They said, no, we've already filled your spot. I was the editor-in-chief of Stuff. And they filled the spot with my brother magazine, Maxim. That editor got the spot. And I was kind of ticked off, and I was thinking, well, what could I do? And so I thought, little people. So the great thing about New York is you can call up and order anything. So I ordered 3 little people. Actually, I had a friend who works like in a burlesque show, so he could get anything. So I said, can I borrow 3 of your guys? And he said, sure. And so I called and reserved seats at this conference, and the 3 little guys were in there, and they had clipboards, and they had their cell phones on vibrate. And so when the conference started, it was like the editor-in-chief of Glamour, the editor-in-chief of Oprah's magazine, the editor-in-chief of Rolling Stone. All these bigwigs were up there. When Cindy Levy started speaking, who was the editor-in-chief, I think at the time of Glamour, their phones would ring on vibrate and would create buzz, because it's on a clipboard, and you just could hear this bzzz, and everybody's like going, what's going on? Bzzz. I forgot to add that each little person was dressed as a character. One was a gangster. Another one was like a British socialite in a top hat, and another one was a preppy. And so they were all sitting in different parts, and all of a sudden, so these people are talking, and you just go, bzzz, they're going like, what's going on? And finally, Cindy Levy goes to this, can you please turn off your phone? And he said, you're saying that because I'm short. and she said, no. She goes, I'm short. I was not there, but I had a person there who was watching the whole thing. So the great thing about this was I call it subverting the subverter. People in magazines think they're so cool and so much smarter than you are, and it's great to subvert them. So I created buzz using their own conference, because it ended up in the New York Post, in the New York Times. It was everywhere. But it illustrated a very important point about political correctness. There was something going on in that meeting, in the audience, but nobody wanted to actually address it. Except one woman said, she stood up and she says, can't we just say something's happening here? Look, she was basically saying, there's 3 little journalists? I didn't even know there was one. There can't be 3. But nobody would say anything because they were scared of being politically incorrect. So inevitably, though, they were escorted out of the building, and I was promoted out of my job.
Yes. So
they actually made up a title. They made a title. It was called Director of Brand Development, which is defined as, please get away from our product. And they even sent me to California. They paid for the rent for my apartment, and they would throw money just to get me away. Go away.
So that is a great transition. I must compliment you.
I had no idea.
To your new book that just came out last week. It's called Not Cool. I think you all have a copy. Mm-hmm. I had a chance to read this when it was loose leaf on the floor of my office, and I spent a day, and I worked with you on The Joy of Hate, just on the publicity piece. Mm-hmm. And I think this one, as your 6th book, is definitely your best.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
And I mean that sincerely.
Oh,
there's like no punchline.
Yes, and because I asked you to say that, and I'm glad you said that.
No, it is very good. And it debuted at number 7 on the New York Times bestseller list. Mm-hmm. So.
Thank you.
It's a big accomplishment. And I thought maybe I'd just give you a little bit of room to run here and to explain, what did you examine in this book? What were you trying to get across?
Well, you write a book when you start noticing trends, when you're writing articles and you keep seeing this thing come up, and it was things that were just driving me crazy, like why are people making stupid decisions? And almost universally, people make really dumb decisions or bad decisions because they want to be liked, or they want to be liked by special people. So you elect a president because you want to be seen as cool for voting for that person. You want to be for a program, even the program's destructive, because it sounds good that you're for that program. And that whole thing, the idea behind that is you want to be cool. And who decides what's cool? Well, I call them the elite hipster, but basically it's the progressives who believe that anything in life that is traditional or that tends to work or that's a product of common sense is stupid. It's irrelevant. It's antiquated. It's old-fashioned. It's like John McCain, not Barack Obama. So you have a war hero who was a seasoned senator, whether you agree with his policies or not, but that's old school. You have this young African-American, that's new. So it doesn't, cool is a value-neutral term. It's neither good nor bad, and that's why, to me, it's bad. Because now you can tell somebody to do a bad thing because it's cool, whether it's experimenting in bizarre drugs or it's engaging in any kind of risky behavior because, don't worry about it being good or bad. It's cool. And that, in my mind, infiltrates all parts of life these days, not just, in adolescence when you're dealing with peer pressure, but also in politics, in elections, how people view the military as a symbol of American exceptionalism. Therefore, it's bad. It's uncool to be in the military. It's much cooler to be a pacifist, even though for a pacifist to exist, there has to be people willing to die for him. But the weird and the sad, or the two sad things about the cool is that they're utterly predictable in the rebellion. They claim to be edgy, but they're as edgy as a marble because they all agree with the same thing. And they have nothing to replace it with. When they say that they don't like something, they never have an alternative. Their alternative really is just destruction, which is why they romance evil in movies and in television. It's why Rolling Stone put the Marathon Bomber on the cover of their magazine, because it was attractive, alluring, and deadly. I make this point in the book, in the chapter on how cool is as evil in entertainment is constantly pushed upon us. If the bombing had occurred in the offices of Rolling Stone magazine, would they have put the bomber on the cover? Of course they wouldn't. They would have shown on the cover their bombed out building. But because they're detached from the actual suffering, they put him on the cover. And they wrote the article saying how bad it was that he did the bombing, but they still had I listed the adjectives of how they described the bomber, and it really was like they were describing Justin Bieber. Mm-hmm. And it just shows you, they took evil and they put it in the prism of cool. Like he was no different than One Direction or I'm trying to think of he looked like an outcast from the Jonas Brothers.
Yep.
And, but it was, darkness is cool. And I think that is the microcosm of the book, is that makes him look cool. He has fans. If you go on Twitter, there are groups that support him. I don't even think they care if he's innocent or guilty. You see the same thing with the cop killer, Mumia Al-Jamal, is that his name? The fact that I know his name pisses me off because, if you Google his name, it'll come up a million times. But the person he killed, Daniel Faulkner, the Philadelphia police officer, you Google his name, maybe it's 70, 100,000 times.
What about Jim Carrey?
Jim Carrey?
Can you tell him that story?
Jim Carrey.
The actor.
Yes. Yes, not the gardener.
I just want to make sure.
There probably is a gardener named Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, after, because there was this a horrible gun tragedy in Connecticut, he decided to put out a video in which he made fun of gun owners. And in that video, he basically completely humiliates and ridicules the memory of Charlton Heston, a man who can't fight back because he is, in fact, dead. And he equates owning guns to being kind of like an emasculated, almost a castrated male. Like only a castrated man would need a gun. And it was really heavy-handed and stupid. And I called him on it. And I said, there's not a single fact in any of your arguments. And B, you're a coward. You're going after a man who's dead, a man who's like 20 times the character that you are. And that to me is weak. But it was an easy battle for him because, if you're in Hollywood, you can be against guns unless, of course, you're using them in a movie. So anyway, he snapped. Wrote a nasty letter to Fox News saying he was going to sue, and it was incredibly gratifying.
And then he apologized.
And then he apologized because I always believe that celebrities are stuck in kind of a protracted adolescence because they spent so much time on themselves. They didn't see the outside world until they finally had time. So whatever their political views are, generally are adolescent in nature. Guns are bad. Well, actually, there are studies that show that felons will not go to a house that's armed. because they don't want to die. There are studies that show that. That's common sense. That's called a hate fact, because they hate it because it's true.
You write in the book about free radicals.
Yes.
What is a free radical, and would you want to be one?
You should want to be one. A free radical is somebody who resists the desire to be liked. These are the people that I believe who are truly cool or actually good. They are good people in that they resist the desire to be liked. They operate by a code. And a code is really interesting because I use Andrew Breitbart as an example. When you met Andrew Breitbart, you had no idea what to make of him. He was going a mile a minute. He was like crazy. But then you realized it was almost like it came together. He operated on a code. Everything made sense. It's a person with a spine who tells the absolute truth and doesn't care what other people think. The important thing for a free radical is to have a sense of humor about life. It's very easy to get angry, and that's what my book, The Joy of Hate, was about. The left invented fake outrage. It's important for us not to adopt it. So you got to be a happy warrior, and I think that's key, especially now. The part of that, a free radical, you can't just be correct. You have to be persuasively correct. There are a lot of people in the Conservative Party, libertarians, who are right, but they can't persuade you of it. And they can't persuade young people of it. And I think that's what we need right now. As a conservative libertarian, we need more people who are persuasively correct, who can go on shows that President Obama can go on and hold their own and not be seen as stiff.
Well, speaking of a great show, and also somebody that you mentioned as a free radical in the book is Roger Ailes, the head of Fox News, who hired you after you got fired from your last job.
Yeah, I know.
And there might be Red Eye fans in here, there might be Five fans in here, but Red Eye, I mean, I think of that as a cool show, but it's cool from my perspective, which maybe it means that it's not cool.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's the least coolest show. I think if the media were, see, a lot of stuff on TV and in magazines are made by people in the media for other people in the media. It's like when you look at a women's magazine, it's written by a women's editor for other women's editors, which is why when a normal woman picks up a women's magazine, it's like, what is going on?
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
I get so mad.
Yeah, no, but even, like, if you look at men's magazines, like GQ and Details and Esquire, those aren't written for men. Those are written for female editors to leave on the cocktail table for their boyfriends. It's never actually read. There's whole networks based on this idea. What Red Eye is a TV show for everybody else. There is no pretension. We don't care if we cross the line or not, because everything we do is true. And you can tell. I don't know. Are there fans of Red Eye here? All right.
Are you insomniacs?
Yeah, if you notice about Red Eye, the guest pool keeps getting smaller and smaller. And it's because it's hard to find people who are honest on television. And it's great when you get somebody who has got a code. A person with a code usually ends up on Red Eye because it's so interesting. A lot of people describe Red Eye as a sandwich that you make at 3 a.m. drunk. So all of a sudden you're about to bite into it and you realize that the mayonnaise cap is in the sandwich.
What are the ratings like?
Red Eye beats, sometimes for a month, will beat everything in CNN at different times. I'm not talking about at 3 a.m., but a 3 a.m. show will beat a CNN show at 8 o'clock.
Now, almost 3 years ago, another show was added to your schedule.
Yes.
We talked about it a little bit before, The Five.
Or 1 plus a half plus 3.5.
In your opinion, is The Five cool or not cool?
Again, I refuse to use those words.
Okay.
It's good or bad. And the Five is good. And the reason why The Five is good is because, again, it's real. I'll bring this example. When The Five started, there are TV blogs written by media hacks who love to predict what's going to succeed and what's going to fail. And I remember on our anniversary of the show, second anniversary, I think I read one, which is, watching The Five, I just can't see how this is going to last more than at least 6 weeks. And you can almost hear his voice. And so on our 2-year anniversary, I put that. I think I read that on the show. And the guy who on the blog said, wow, that's obsessive that he would remember that. And it's like, so wait, it's my fault that I proved you wrong. That's a media hack. It's like, there's no way you can win. But the success of the Five is that on other TV shows, they see an audience of their peers, which are people working at other shows. That's all they see. And they think, will this impress Anderson Cooper? Will this impress Rachel Maddow? The Five, and Fox News in general, sees beyond that to the audience. They look beyond, and the Five looks beyond their peers. We don't care what they're doing. All we care is the audience having a good time. And I think that's why the Five works, is because the chemistry is real. It's unpredictable because we don't care. We're not interested in impressing anybody who
We don't even talk to one another before 4 p.m.
No, we can't stand each other. I mean, you laugh, but we actually do not look at each other in the eye when we're walking down the halls.
That's not true.
Well, that's because of our height.
You can't see them.
Each other, yes. Yes.
Okay,
you do realize that she sits on 2 pillows during the show. That is a fact.
And one of them is very special to me. It was given to Greg, actually, by a fan, sent to him years ago. It has a little unicorn on it.
Yes.
And now it's like my good luck charm. I'm not very superstitious, but I have to have that pillow.
Yes. God knows where that pillow's been, too. It's like people send us some really... that's the funny story. When you meet fans of the Five and Red Eye, a lot of fans give you stuff. And when I was on a book tour last year, the bus was filled with gifts and mementos. And the bus driver, the people that work for the Premier Collectibles who were running the tour were saying, like, so why do you ask people to do this? Why do you ask people to do it? And I go, we have never asked for anything. We just happen to be a show where people come and bring us things. That doesn't happen to other shows.
And they make us things.
They make us stuff.
I had a woman who was, during her chemotherapy, remember she'd painted the picture of Jasper?
Yeah, that was great. No,
other one.
There was another one it's like one of those paintings in a haunted house of Dana, where it's like she's with her dog, and it's like you walk around and you swear it's looking at you. It's like Dana like this.
And it's very good of Jasper, but not that good of me.
Jasper's you, but you were like this evil automaton. It's funny because it's in the Red Eye office, and we all just walk in and we don't even want to touch it. It's like we're afraid that if we actually put our hand on it, our hand will turn to dust, or like the Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark will just start melting.
I have to ask about everybody's favorite character of the Five. For many different reasons, he's the favorite, because you love to hate him or you hate to love him. Mm-hmm. And it's Bob Beckel.
Yeah.
Bob Beckel.
Okay.
Bob Beckel.
Yes.
He's our crazy Uncle Bob.
Yes, he is. And I can't say I met Beckel, but I remember him. I went to a debate in 1988 when I was working for The Spectator, and he was there, and he just seemed like a really scary guy. And also I was a conservative, so I didn't like him anyway. And he was there with Jesse Jackson, and I was like going, and then all of a sudden, it's like 20 years later, I'm working with him, and he really is a teddy bear. He's just this, he is a genuinely, I would say metaphorically he has a big heart, but I think literally he has a big heart. I think medically it's called enlarged. I hope everything's okay with him. But no,
Sometimes you get in big fights with Bob. I mean, and is that real?
It is real. I think that when we are on the show, we go at it because you know what's funny? You cannot argue with somebody you don't like because it's like it's not worth it. Or you just, it's like, you know what? If you don't have a chemistry or rapport with somebody, you actually don't want to disagree with them because it just feels awkward. Mm-hmm. With Bob, because you actually respect each other, you can go at each other's throats. And then when the cameras go off, we're like, you know, he'll say something to me, and I'll say something, but then it's like completely forgotten.
And the great thing about Bob is that he's got a short memory.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, you can tell him.
He can be so mad. I had a big blow up with him last week in the B block. I lost my temper. I wasn't proud of it. I felt so bad that the next day I brought him chocolates, and he was like, "What is this for?" Now,
Well, you got to test that, though. You have to test that one day, and you go, hey, you like just on Monday, just go, Bob, you know, no rush on the $500 I lent you from last week. I just, you know, don't worry about it. And he'll go, yo, wait, I'll just go to the ATM now and get it for you.
You know what's let me tell you a great story about Bob that you don't know, and then I'm going to give you a last question before we take their questions. A story that they don't know about Bob is that in the middle of one of our horrible snowstorms this winter, Bob got a call from the Central AA office. And it was 8:30 p.m., and the ice is coming down, and Bob only has cowboy boots until the next day when I bought him a pair of UGG boots. And he wrote me a check, and it actually cleared. But he got a call from the Central AA office about these guys who were out at LaGuardia, and they were new to AA, and they were really worried about being lost to temptation because the airport was closed, all the shops were closed. The only thing that stays open at an airport at that point is the bar.
You know, I just want to point out, maybe that was the sign to start drinking.
No, not for these guys. Not for these guys.
Yeah, no.
So they knew enough to call the Central AA office, who then calls the one person they know who's in New York City who's going to be willing to get up off the couch and get in a car and go out to LaGuardia and hold and host an AA meeting for them. And that's what he did that night. And the only reason we knew about it is because Bob's always got bumps and bruises and things, and he had fallen in the ice that night in his cowboy boots. But he was not going to let those guys be without their last meeting. So. Okay. Even though I really don't like you, I could talk to you all night. But I have to wrap it up here, and before we take questions, and there's microphones on either side, and we'll try to get through as many as we can in the time allotted, about 20 minutes. The last question I have for you is, we are approaching graduation. There's a lot of young people here and a lot of parents and grandparents who care about their children. If you had to recommend, if you could recommend some authors or writers that they should look for and read and that recommend to their kids, because a lot of things on campus, a lot of things like American Spectator, you're not going to be handed to when you are on campus.
Exactly.
In the classroom. You actually have to go out and find material like at National Review or Weekly Standard, wherever it might be. Yeah. And I think you are, not only are you a fabulous writer, but you're an excellently well-read person. What would you recommend?
All right, okay, so I made a list.
Okay.
All right. Greg Gutfeld. All right. Gregory Gutfeld. J. Gutfeld. I could do this for a while. No, funny people. Okay, kids read, I'm old. They ingest words differently these days. Ace of Spades is a blog, which I think is great for conservative thought, and it's very funny. I think it's a great place for people to get a perspective on things. I'm a big fan of Mark Stein. I'm sure you guys are. He's also funny.
Yeah.
It's important to find people like, for me, it was P.J. O'Rourke. And Mark Stein is like that, I think, or could be like that. An interesting character that if you watch Red Eye, and he's a little too blue, but he could change an 18-year-old's life, is Gavin McInnes.
Gavin got applause.
He got applause, I'll tell him that. He writes at something called Tacky, I think it's called tackyblog.com, which is run by Tacky Theocropoulos.
I think it's tackymag.com.
Tackymag.mag. He created a magazine called Vice. He's a crazy person. He's covered in tattoos, but he is a modern conservative, and he's hysterical. Matt Labash from the Weekly Standard. He's a great young writer. Andrew Ferguson, also from the Weekly Standard, who I worked with at the American Spectator, is great as well. You can't go wrong with Krauthammer. I think that's his. I just like saying Krauthammer because it sounds like Krauthammer. Tonight on Krauthammer, he's got 48 hours to find the missing girl. Krauthammer. Krauthammer in my office now. What is it, Captain? We need your badge. Oh, just doing my job. I could create an entire Krauthammer show around him. I probably have. A pretty heady writer from National Review, but just a beautiful user of words. Unlike me, as Kevin Williamson, we both love him. The great thing about Dana is that she sends articles to me every morning to read. And they're always.
I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, it is a great thing because I do read these things anyway. Florence King is a great writer. In terms of fiction, I wrote, my favorite fiction writer is Jim Thompson, who writes pot boilers, film noir, dark pot boilers, The Killer Inside Me. He writes about evil, and I think he's great. And if you're into philosophy, Alain de Botton is a good writer. See, I actually made
Nice accent.
I made a real list of people, and also get him to start reading Reason magazine. It's really boring looking, but it's a libertarian magazine with a sound take on the issues. Did I leave anybody out? Anybody else?
I think that was good.
All right, cool.
George Will, you like George Will.
But the thing is with George Will, extremely bright, but I have a hard time. His writing confuses me. He uses words that I've never heard of. And then I have to keep rereading George Will's sentences. Do you guys do that? Is it just me?
It might
Do you think
be
he does that on purpose? Does he
He just operates on another level.
Yeah, he just sits there and he goes, okay, 750 words. I bet it's going to take him 3 hours to read this. That's what he does.
You know, now when they have on Special Report Krauthammer and George Will at the same table, it's like
and they both glare at each other like professional wrestlers. Like, who's smarter? Let America decide.
All right, we're going to move to your questions.
Now, you
Greg
want to still talk
Gutfeld,
about
Not
George
Cool,
Will.
author of Not Cool. Let's give him a hand, and then I'll take your questions. So this is your chance.
No questions.
You can ask Greg and I anything you want, but you got to come down to these microphones here because we need it on C-SPAN. But we'll wait for you to get there. Come on, there's got to be more than one. There we go. You can ask anything.
Nobody wants to be the first.
You want to ask about Kimberly?
They always want to be the third.
Andrea? We'll start with you. I see you first. Go ahead, ma'am.
What do you think is the best approach to changing the not cool vibe, to introducing young people and other, changing the cultural norm of liberalism that's becoming right now?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Humor. Humor combined with facts. You got to know what you're talking about. It goes back to being persuasively correct. If you know that you've got a friend that constantly talks about global warming, instead of saying it's a farce and it's stupid, read a little on it, get the facts, and then respond with humor. And basically that's what we do every day with the Five, is that you read about something, and what I try to do is I try to create a metaphor to describe it to somebody. Also, a great tool if you can never have an opinion about something is pretend you're drunk. No, it's true. If you can't think of something to say about anything, envision yourself after 4 beers. You always have an opinion. You don't have to get drunk. You save money.
Last week on The Independence, you talked about kind of how you come up with your book subjects. Do you think to writing in The Joy of Hate about the Tolerati that led you straight into Not Cool?
I think so. Because when I was doing the speech at the Reagan Library about The Joy of Hate, I had written this speech, and then I realized half of it was about the desire for acceptance. Why were people so worried about being politically correct? It's because they were fearful of rejection. Everybody wants to be liked. Nobody wants to be on the other side of the velvet rope that begins when you're in grade school. And political correctness is that coercive threat that if you don't believe in these thoughts, we are going to smear the hell out of you. And I talk about this, I think, in the book, that how the internet has democratized fame so that if you are politically incorrect, you could be ruined forever because it's so easy for somebody to do it on the web. And I think that's how it happened, was that it's like, a desire to be cool creates this phony intolerance.
So why is it okay for liberals to say something outrageous and they get to move on, but conservatives get tagged with every negative connotation?
Because who is in that game, who is the ref? The referee is the media, and the referee happens to be owned by the other side. You've got in the media, I call it the media academic industrial complex. You know, you used to have remember they used to say in the 70s it was the military industrial complex. This is far worse. It all comes from the big giant stew. It's like they're all from the campus. The people that are liberal in campus either become professors or they get into media. They all believe, that's why I say they're as predictable and as edgy as marbles, because they're all the same. But that's why, it's like, so if you can get away with saying something completely disgusting on the left, and everybody will laugh, but if you do it on the right, you have a target on your back, and you just made that target really big.
And if you're a free radical, you're willing to have the target.
You're willing to have the target.
Okay, over here.
I finished the book yesterday. I'm a dyslexic audiobook junkie, and it came out. So you made a comment about your disdain for people who place their identity over their achievement.
Right.
And that, to me, was one of the most profound things I took out of the book. The question I had, you brought up McGinnis a minute ago. How did you guys ever cross paths? Because his book is way out there, and I'd love to hear your autobiography, and I would love to hear a Beckel biography.
How did who cross paths?
Gavin McGinnis.
Oh, Gavin McInnes.
Oh, Gavin. Gavin, well, he created a magazine called Vice, which is one of the crudest magazines you will ever see in your life. I won't even tell you what's in it because...
You even told me not to look at it.
I told you not to look at it. But it was phenomenally successful, and Gavin created the modern hipster. You see guys with goatees and earrings and nose rings and tattoos, that's Gavin. And when I found out that he was a conservative, I thought, I have to have him on Red Eye. So I just emailed him, and he was hysterical. And he doesn't care about anything. About, you know, he's a pro-life, Catholic, with 3 kids, but he looks like the most decadent Hell's Angel you'd ever run across. Just frightening. And he says the most politically incorrect things you will ever hear.
I love to be on Red Eye with him.
Yeah, it's just, and also he plays different roles. He'll play his liberal brother on Red Eye, Miles McInnes, and talk like this. Oh yeah, it's like the war in Iraq. You know, see, he has that great tone. Oh my God.
Over here.
I'd be interested to hear what your observations are regarding Northwestern University football players wanting to become paid employees of the university as football players as opposed to student athletes. And especially when you look at it in light of most universities have such a liberal outlook with their faculty and everything, and now it seems like they're on the other side of the coin.
Right. How can it get any worse? That's the way I see it. If they're out making money, maybe that will teach them to be capitalists. You know, there can't be anything worse in college than what's going on in the classroom. You know, but I will say this. I mean, it wouldn't be such. It's not so much about money; it's about character, and I think that's the problem. I have a chapter in Not Cool. It's called Bling Over Balls.
Miami?
I don't know, but no, it's sport. I'm talking about sports, people. And it's about how it used to be okay just to be an athlete, but now you have to have
Bling
a persona.
before balls.
Yeah, see, I was close.
Bling before balls.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if I should have
You have to,
explained
yeah, I
that.
think you should apologize.
Over here.
But anyway, the long story is that it used to be enough to play a sport, but now you have to be somebody special. You have to have the bling, you have to have a bunch of cars, and you have to be at nightclubs and all that stuff. And it's because that's an infestation of pop culture and cool ethos into the sporting world, which I think is polluting it.
Yes, sir.
Mine's a little an offbeat question.
You like those?
I'm a huge fan of the Five. What do you guys do during the commercial breaks that you guys come back laughing at? I have an idea. You guys should do pay-per-view, or you can watch you guys during the commercials so that we can hear you talk.
You know, it has occurred to me that one of the ways to raise money for a charity would be to auction off one of those, an availability to see what happens in the commercial breaks, because sometimes it really is funnier than what happens on the show. This is an example. We'll finish a heated argument. Let's say it's about global warming. We'll finish, and then Bob will just start laughing. You're like, Bob, did you really believe anything that you were just saying? And he just gets that Cheshire cat grin, and he laughs. And sometimes, thankfully, our producer Porter is here, and maybe we could give him a hand, Porter Berry. He worked for O'Reilly for many years, and then he came to our show. We were very fortunate to get him to come to our show.
He came to the light.
He's smart when he's working with the director, because in the control room, you'll see things that are happening off camera. So say the camera's on Greg, and over here, Kimberly and Bob are poking at each other and elbowing each other like, Bob, Kimberly, and it's just, Sometimes we're like really angry, and like then there'll be silence
Yeah.
for a while, and other times we'll just start thinking about like what is in the next block, or gosh, that wasn't a very good conversation. But usually it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, what I do almost immediately is I just get on my phone and I look on Twitter and I see what jokes worked.
Yeah.
And I just go, and it's because for me, Twitter is a video game. It's a video game for your brain in which, okay, say this and see what comes back, and you try to beat the last score.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah, it's like oh, I got 500 retweets. But in this case, like I will make I prepare for the show, and Danny can attest. I don't, half of the stuff I say is off the cuff, and the other half is dope. I better get this line in because I think it's a good line, and then I go and I go, how did it work? And if I see like just a shh all the way through, I'm like,
you're happy.
Yes, I'm very happy.
And if you don't, you are so like a little wounded.
I'm like going, how did that not work?
He's like, and you sulk.
No, I would.
And you're like, no, wait, no, that was a really good joke. Why didn't anybody get it?
Yeah, it gets me so angry when it really does get. It's like, how did that not work? And then so I will sometimes use it again.
What else? There's another thing that you do every day in the commercial break between the C and the D block. Can you tell people what that is?
It's a weird. I think it's an obsessive compulsive thing where I sing about my food. And I don't know why, because see, but from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I prepare for Red Eye. We tape Red Eye around 8:15. And like around, it's weird, about 5:35 on the knot, I'm thinking, what am I gonna eat? And I go, Chinese food. And it's like, I don't even know I'm doing it. But everybody there is just staring at me. Chinese food. Ribs. Should I have ribs? Should I have ribs? Chipotle. Going to Chipotle. Across the street, guacamole.
I know, we think it's hilarious, but who knows if it would do well if we actually aired it.
But no, the weird thing is, it's completely unconscious, and I do it every single day. And it's weird. I don't know why, but it just shows you, as an animal, how robotic you are. Like, there's just certain things that you do, you're not even aware you're doing it.
That's a great question, thank you. Anybody else over here? Yes.
Just real quick, Dana, it's been really great to see your kind of personal and social evolution over the last couple of years. It's been incredibly fun, so thank you for that. Greg, it seems that the success of Red Eye has led to possibly the Five happening, and then also even a new show that I think a lot of people here are really liking called The Independents, as well as many of the guests that you've had now becoming mainstream on many of the other daytime shows. I'm curious as your comments on that, please. Also, who invented the leg chair, and will we ever see a return of Ab News?
Ooh, okay, I'll work backwards. Ab News was...
Which is why I said I wouldn't go on Red Eye.
Yeah, Ab News was one of the greatest ideas I've ever had in my life. Because I worked at Stuff Magazine and Maxim Magazine, I was like, wouldn't it be hilarious if I'm reading the news while somebody is doing ab exercises, preferably a pretty girl, and you can exercise along while I'm doing the news. How can you not? That's a network. It is a network. But the problem was, it was like there's some people that didn't agree with the idea, and were like, you can't use our, like, I think, I won't say who it was.
I know who it was.
A newscaster on, from Fox News, and it's like, these are our newscasters. You can't use them for these things. And I go, but it's great. But anyway, I mean, I can still do Ab News, but I've got to figure out who I use to do it, and I might use Mike Baker. Because he's got a big contingent. But anyway, the question before that, what? Oh, that was a creation of fans. We've never ever used that phrase ever in our lives. It is something that on Red Eye, because there's a woman on that edge, they go, oh, good. Jedediah's in the leg chair, they'll say, and it's like, but I never said that, and I don't really like the term, but I understand the term. But and the other thing about guests, Red Eye, the great thing about Red Eye, it's like a farm league for interesting people. That's how I got to the 5, was from Red Eye. And you do see people from Red Eye ending up not just on Fox News, but ending up with their own TV shows elsewhere, who are too big now to come back and do Red Eye. I won't say their names, but they're, you know, we're always on the lookout for interesting, funny people.
I would just encourage you that if you give anybody any of the authors that Greg recommended, the other thing you should do, and you should help your grandparents if they need help, or help your parents, DVR Red Eye, because it really is the funniest thing on cable news by far, and the word needs to spread. I'm going to give the last question to you, ma'am.
It appears that I'm short. I'm sorry.
That's all right. We know what you're going through.
We know the struggle. Every day I wake up and I'm short. Give now, and you'll receive this special shirt. I don't know.
Thank you. We have a ban now on plastic bags here in Dallas.
Of what?
A ban on, well, they're trying to ban plastic bags by making them expensive. And you had written about that in your book about San Francisco. Could you expound on that? I wish your book had been out a week earlier. Maybe it wouldn't have been a...
It's death for the greater good. The great thing about plastic bags is that you throw them away. When you start using a cloth bag, you keep them, and people don't clean their cloth bags, so it increases, I think, I can't remember the percentage in my book, but it increases the risk of death. People die from foodborne illnesses because their bags are dirty. It's that simple. So, but it's for the greater good, so you can't have plastic bags anymore, because I guess, it's going to choke a seagull. I mean, have you seen a seagull lately? People, they are rats with wings. They're very antisocial. You can't keep them as a pet. I've tried.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up and say that for me, to be here at the Bush Center meant a lot to me. And President Bush and Mrs. Bush really changed my life by giving me an opportunity to work with them and for them. And I love this library, and I was really glad to be able to show it to Greg today. I'm glad my friends were here. The only way it could get better is if Jasper were lying here and Dierks Bentley came in and played a set.
Yeah. It's good to see you're not obsessed.
I'm not obsessed. I just want to point, I hope she doesn't mind, I just want to point out that Greg's wife, Elena, is here. She puts up with him more than I do.
Stand up. Stand up.
There's Elena. And she's going to join him for his book tour that is continuing tomorrow, but this was a wonderful stop on it, and I'll just give you another chance to give Greg a last round of applause.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Yes.
I've said this before. I've said this before, when you're short, every ovation is a standing ovation.
We'll see you for the pictures.